Media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
A lot more about her incredible life. Let's see. Penny Bradley shares her story of how she survived experimentation at Montauk, childhood CIA assassin training, and 60 years in a U.S. Navy exchange program with the Deep Space Fleet and Mars colonies. After her service, she was re-aged and sent back to Earth to live out the remainder of her life with health disabilities. And that's common for a lot of these people in these programs. Penny writes, I was a Military Laboratories created hybrid born in 1955. I was kidnapped in 59 from my bed and taken to Langley for mind fracture and weaponization of my psi abilities. Part of that was a tour at Montauk in the time tunnel. In 64, I was taken to Mars through the New York jumpgate. I spent 25 years on Mars in school and as a fighter pilot in a war with the native Green Reptilians and the Mantids. In 1990, I was transferred to Dark Fleet, where I was a navigator and a freighter for about 25 years. In 2014, I was age regressed, mind wiped, and time traveled back to where I was taken from. I no longer knew my family and had lots of programmed alters. In the lifetime since I was returned, I studied mathematics, computers, and microbiology. I was married, had 3 children, now grown. There have been obvious blockages in my life path. Age regression sickness started in 1981. I was still able to work most of the time until about 2001 when arsenic poisoning floored me. I struggled to regain my health and was working full-time again in 2004. And then I suffered a work injury, which made me paralyzed from the waist down in 2009. I came back enough that I can walk and take care of myself. And I started recovering memories and reintegrating alters in 2013. Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say?
Just, I'm in awe of your coming forth. I was just talking to Randy Kramer the other weekend about the breakaway of the slave colonies on Mars and all that involves. People really have to know what's happening to their disappearing people here and what's going on in Mars.
Yes, thank you so much, Penny, for being so brave and coming out and telling the truth to our planet. We need to know this information so we can take some corrective actions and make a better world for everybody. Welcome to our show, Penny.
Thank you for having me.
We're very glad you came. Would you like to start and tell us a little bit more about what happened to you? I know there's a lot of details. We have 2 hours. We'll go as far as we can, and I'm sure we'll have you back on other shows because this is a very important issue. So take it away, Penny. If you want to talk for about 15, 20 minutes and then stop and say, do we have any questions? I know we will. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take good notes, and so will Dr. Lessin. Go ahead and start. Thank you, Penny.
Okay. My grandparents were Grapes of Wrath immigrants to California, and we were what was generally considered to be a white trash family. Most of your listeners will understand what that is. I didn't know until I did our family ancestry that that's not all we were. In the process of doing the family tree, I found out that my supposedly Irish father was actually half Cherokee, and that his mother's father was born in the city of London. I found out that my mother's father was descended from a bastard of Henry VIII, and that her mother was Jewish. And none of my grandparents ever talked about this. So this was all, I was on Ancestry from about 2005 until about 2011. And I hunted down all the connections to find out who we were. And I also found out that my grandmother's father, who was born in the city of London, was a 33rd degree Mason. So that kind of explains why our family line was chosen. Since I started remembering the SSP stuff, I'll say up front, I have done a tremendous amount of research because my memories were in German, which I understand about like a 4-year-old. So I get the drift, but I don't know what things really are. So I was getting these traumatic memories, and I couldn't understand the explanations. And so I started doing research to find out what they were. And so I would like to thank Randy Kramer and the researchers like Richard Dolan, and I just blanked on names, I'm sorry. But I want to thank them for all of their careful research, and for those whistleblowers who have come out before me, like Randy Kramer and Michael Relf. Their descriptions have helped me clarify my memories. And I want to give credit where credit is due. That's become a really big deal in this last summer's attacks on Corey Good, that he did research, therefore he's a fraud. I'm sorry, I did research. If that makes me a fraud, so be it. But these are my very real personal memories that I'm talking about, and the nature of the programs is that you come back without any 3D physical proof. All we have is our word. So I wanted to make it clear from the get-go, I have done research. As part of that research, I found where President Eisenhower gave the CIA authorization in 1953 to do whatever it took for Earth humans to survive the terraforming that was being done by an ET group.
Okay, let me ask you some questions on a couple things. So you're doing great, by the way. And,
You're alluding to a document that where there's where the president said you can kidnap people.
right.
Yes.
So, and,
There was a document in 1953 that I have not seen the actual document, but I've seen reports about it. And they were online, and Bill Cooper was one of them that reported it.
oh, okay. So this is before the meeting with the ET races in California with Eisenhower and with
I think so.
the Lord. Yeah, okay.
When did they start taking you?
Well, what they did was the CIA developed the Military Laboratories / military abductions program. And they chose certain bloodlines that had already come to their attention. And when these women that they had chosen got pregnant, their doctors reported it to the CIA, and they had been told it was a matter of national security. They didn't know any better. And so the women were abducted, and their babies were genetically modified and reinserted. And my mother was one of those women that had come to their attention. She has O negative blood, and she's a descendant of Henry VIII. So she's traditional bloodline. And yet, poor and no power, and if something went wrong and she died, no one that mattered would miss her. That's exactly what they were looking for.
Wow.
And that's what I have discovered, is that they follow the bastard lines of the royals. So I too am a descendant of Henry VIII.
So we're cousins, distantly.
We're cousins. We're distant cousins, yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
and my grandfather was a 33 Mason, so we've got a lot of commonalities here. Go ahead and continue, though. You have more information than I do.
The other thing they looked for was ethnicities that had high metagene. Now, in Europe, they have for centuries killed off people with high metagene, labeling them witches, and they would just burn them.
What is metagene? I'm not sorry for my ignorance. What is metagene?
Metagene is the magic thing that the ETs are looking for that humans have and they don't. Metagene.
Is it?
It allows you. It allows you to create your own reality.
Pineal crystals, yes.
It allows you to be multidimensional and in a three-dimensional body at the same time. It allows you to travel interdimensionally without tech and still have a body alive when you get back.
Mm-hmm.
We are the only race in this galaxy that has it, and apparently we got it by accident, and they're really, really, really curious about us, and that's why no ET group has killed us off. We have something they want. So
it's like the pineal, the crystals, the blue crystals in the pineal, like Anu had in his forehead. I bet you that's where it is. The transducer is in the pineal gland.
I'm not sure exactly where it is because people have talked about the hippocampus too. But it's in the same third ventricle part of the brain. So they're all right there together, so they could be feeding off each other. But that's why the ETs haven't killed us, is because we have the metagene. Now, there are ethnic groups that have higher metagene because they have honored and protected their shaman. Where Europe and some parts of Africa and most of Asia have tended to kill off their people with metagene, the Americas honored those people.
Yeah.
And so Native American tribes have higher metagene than Europeans. So since my father was Native American and my mother was bloodline, they must have really, truly drooled over me. But
they're drooling over you, Penny.
Yeah,
they hit the gold mine when they found you.
Well, my mother had 6 pregnancies. One died before it was born. So there were 5 of us, and I have reason to believe that all 5 of us were abducted, but I have no proof. And my
Did you ever
sibling,
volunteer? Did you ever say, I consent to this, or I want it? Or did you never do that?
I was still an embryo when I was first.
Oh my gosh.
I
No
was
choice.
I was not even born. I had no choice. I had no way to say no. And
Wow.
I have no memory from before I was 4 years old. But I've seen photos of myself at around 2, and I already had a haunted look in my eyes. And 2-year-olds don't normally have that unless they've been really abused.
Right.
So I have no memories from before my abduction at age 4 at all.
So
No.
who was the they that abducted you at age 4?
Well, I was taken to Langley in Virginia, so it was a CIA base. So I'm assuming that it was the CIA.
Okay.
I was.
Do you have any? What happened to your family? Did they get in trouble that you were gone, or was there a cover story?
Age regressed and time traveled back to within 15 minutes of when I was taken. So they knew I was missing.
Uh-huh.
Although when I came back, it was the summer before I started kindergarten. And I told the kindergarten teacher that Martians had left me on the doorstep. And the kindergarten teacher told my mom, and she promptly beat me half to death. They believed in spare the rod, spoil the child, and they were Church of Christ. My father was a pastor, and in some ways, they were just as bad as the CIA.
Right. So you told the truth.
I told the truth, and I got beaten for it.
But it was, so at Langley, it wasn't just military.
No,
You somehow had a Martian experience too.
Yeah,
okay.
Let her go. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You guys have interrupted. So where was I?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was 4, we were living in a 2-bedroom trailer house that my parents moved from job to job because my father had a nasty temper and would get fired. And, okay. One night in the summer of 1959, they took me. And mind wiped me. And I was taken to Langley from Tulare County, California. And I was basically at Langley for 5 years.
Wow.
I was a 4-year-old child, and I was small for my age. And I was blonde-haired, green-eyed, and when I was in the sun, I would have a natural tan. I would get really dark-skinned because of the Cherokee. But if I wasn't in the sun, I looked like any Aryan child that they had on the base. I did not have a name there. I was my room number. They had very small rooms that were like cells. They had cots and a small toilet and a basin to wash our hands, just like in a prison. Everything was white. The walls were white, our cotton pajamas were white, the bedding was white. Everything was white. That was the only color we saw.
What was your number?
7.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
I was number 7 for 5 years. They shaved my head. The whole time I was there, I had a shaved head. They started the mind fracture process in a whirlpool tub that they had the whirlpool turned off, and they just stuck me headfirst into it until I would inhale the water. And they had a regeneration tank at the base, and if I died, I died, and I would wake up in the tank. Once their intention was to do what Stuart Swerdlow calls the 13 by 13 by 13 cube. That was the intention, and I've already reintegrated 28 of those, so I still have a very long way to go.
Can you explain what a 13 by 13 by 13 cube is?
They fracture your mind into a cube with that many alters. About half of them hold traumatic memories. The other half can be programmed into people, sort of. Their personalities. Each one that is programmed as a person has an independent existence. They can speak different languages. They can assign them different gender identities. They can program them with different illnesses, allergies, everything. They're like completely different people. And each of them can be programmed for different tasks. The first of those alters that I got mostly full memory from was the one that was on Mars. But we'll talk about her later.
Okay.
While I was at Langley, the first thing they did was do the basic mind fracture with drowning. And then they raped me as a 4-year-old, and not just one. And when it got to where I no longer responded to that, there was one wall that was a little deeper than the rest, and it had a section where the front of it was missing. And there was a hole in the middle that was small child sized, and they would shove me in it and nail plywood over it and leave me until I ran out of air. And they would pull me out and either use CPR if I was still sort of there, or dump me in the regen tank. And when I stopped responding to that, they would shoot me. After all, they had a regen tank to bring me back. They made it very, very clear to me as a 4-year-old that death was not an option, that there was no escape from these people, that cooperation was my only choice. And that sometimes even cooperation wouldn't stop them hurting me.
Wow.
Somewhere around age 6, they had trained me to the point that they decided to take me to Montauk. Now, I know the later program was all boys, and I'm part of the reason why. Because of my particular mix of psi abilities, when I would go into the time tunnel, I would travel interdimensionally instead of through time. And they would get really, really, really mad about that, the Scientologists running the place. And they had an incinerator for the kids that came back too crazy to salvage.
Say that again. They had an incinerator. What happened?
It was for the kids that came back too crazy to salvage.
Oh, okay.
They burned 70% of the kids. And there were ETs there. There was one warrior caste Draco that was observing me. And the guy that was in charge, the Scientologist, was so angry that he yanked me out of the chair. First time he didn't even unhook me, so I was sitting on a box because I was too short to reach the electrodes on the chair back otherwise. So I was strapped in shoulders and hips, and he didn't even unbuckle me first. He was so angry. And then he stopped and unbuckled me, and he was halfway to throwing me into the fire when the Draco stopped him. Well, Draco have this presence that's kind of overwhelming for humans. And when the Draco said stop, the guy didn't have a choice. And the Draco very calmly told him, "Chip her, and then we will find her." And so that's what they did. I was chipped. My first chip was I was 6 years old. By the time I was sent back, I had over 5,000 chips.
Oh,
Oh my goodness.
Most of
Are
them.
they all tracking? What are the purposes of 5,000 chips?
They each have a separate purpose. Some are for tracking. Some are for reading my thoughts. Some are for using my brain as a relay between computers. I'm hardwired into several computer systems. I'm like
oh, you can get information at will from the computers at the other end. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I'm more like a circuit. I'm more like a circuit. The information passes through me, but there's a firewall where I can't affect anything unless my life is in danger.
I got it.
So, and they did that on purpose so I couldn't hurt them. But after I came back from Langley, well, I did go through several more time tunnel trips. The only one that was actual time travel that I remember was being sent back into about the 1880s to a general store somewhere in the West. And they had an apple display, apples in bushel buckets, wooden bushel buckets outside. And I was supposed to steal one and not be seen, and not eat the apple. And,
wow.
Well, you know.
What's behind an assignment like that?
They were testing the butterfly effect. You know, the butterfly effect is that if you go back in time and you kill a butterfly, that the whole future is going to be affected.
Mm-hmm.
So they were testing how far back, what kind of details would actually change things. because the CIA eventually had a program to change the past to give them more power in the present.
Yes, yes.
There are
Wow.
others who have talked about this. But this was the early stages with the time tunnel, and they were working out the details. And I was supposed to take careful note of what changed when I came back. Well,
Did you notice anything?
Yeah, what changed?
nothing had changed. So they decided that taking apples wasn't a big enough deal, and that I really hadn't been seen, because 6-year-old girls in the 1880s were not blonde and in white cotton pajamas and barefoot.
But Patty, what did knowing all these children were burning do to you emotionally? How did you handle that?
The process of mind fracture makes you disassociate, so you really don't feel it. I have felt it more as an adult dealing with memories. The memory
Wow.
of other kids burning has been really hard to live with.
Yes.
Really hard to live with. The other one was I had nightmares for a while about the memory of being nailed into the wall. And finally, when the actual memory came up, I have Addison's disease as part of my age regression sickness. And I went into adrenal shock over that one. Had to be medicated.
Wow.
So back to the butterfly effect. So the apple wasn't sufficient. What did they do the next time they sent you? Did they do something more?
They try a more dramatic thing, yeah.
They, I don't remember any more trips after that one. That was the only one that I traveled in actual time. The rest of them, I wasn't cooperative, and I was trying to escape. And with the chip that they used, the Draco were able to find me interdimensionally, and they would drag me back. So they decided that I was not a good candidate, and they took me back to Langley. And my understanding is that after that, they only put boys through it, because they didn't go interdimensional.
Have you watched the show Strange Things that they have on? Oh, which one is that?
I watched
Netflix.
I watched that after the first people that interviewed me were from Decoders of Truth on Facebook, and they asked me about it, and I had not seen it. And I watched it about the time that James Rink interviewed me. And
yeah, I just want you were able to watch it, because that would be very hard to watch based on your history. It would bring back a lot of memories.
Lou watched it with me because I went into shock every episode.
Yeah.
Stranger Things is a sanitized version of what they did to us. A much sanitized version.
Right.
They did have the desensitization tank. I spent a lot of time in what they call the upside down. We called it the down below. It's a real place, and it has its own creatures and ecology, and it's quite dangerous. And they were sending preschoolers into it. And
there was another show they created that's around the same time I watched it. I think it's called EA or AE. It's about a woman who had a near-death experience, and they kept killing her and all these other people. And it sounds like what they did with you. They drowned you, but the same thing. Death was no escape. It kept pulling them back.
Yeah, death. I've seen a couple of episodes of that, but didn't get into. I got to the point where the guy captured her and didn't watch anymore. It was too disturbing. I was sitting shaking through it. I couldn't watch the rest.
So you tried to run away, and they always caught you. Did you ever fight with them?
Wow.
Did you have any allies? Any people that tried to help you?
I was a 50-pound kid under 4 foot tall, surrounded by adult men, and a 13-foot tall Draco. I mean, reality is I had no power in the situation. I took advantage of the only escape opportunity I saw, which was to go interdimensional. And they always found me.
So you're going back to Langley after the Draco said you're not a
5 years.
good candidate. So what happened next?
They started weaponizing my psi abilities. I can remote view, not terribly well. They kept pushing me to be better at it. When you do not perform to expectations, they put you in an old-style electric chair and fry you, and then dump you in the regeneration tank. But they let you go through the execution. So you learn. They eventually figured out I just couldn't do it. I'm better at reading emotions than thoughts. They wanted me to be able to remote view a person and repeat the person's thoughts to them. Basically like they asked Eleven to do in Stranger Things.
Right.
That she managed to put it through the radio for them. I couldn't do that. I could read their emotions. I could get an idea of what they were saying, but I couldn't quote it to them word for word. And they finally figured out that I actually couldn't do it. What they did find was that when I get that upset, I can fry electronics. They discovered that because they kept electrocuting me and I would turn off the electricity.
Oh, good.
And then they figured out that I could remote view well enough to target that onto a target by remote viewing. And so they decided to weaponize that. And they figured out that in spite of them, I had an ethical compass. So they had to give me a reason why I should kill these people, or ETs, or destroy this base, or the ship, or whatever. So they started shooting me with energy weapons. And I would respond to the weapon. And that I'm able to trace an energy signature back to its source. So if I'm shot by something here, and okay, this was an episode that happened in April this year. I was shot by a microwave laser that they had installed into the wall in my apartment. And they were controlling it remotely through the smart meter on the wall. And I was able to track the weapon to its energy supply in my fuse box, and then to the smart meter, and then through the grid to the computer that was controlling the smart meter.
Wow.
And I fried, well, the weapon that they have available to me is not a finesse weapon. It's something to blow up spaceships, not simple computers. So I ended up blowing up the ET cave at Dulce Base in April. And I've already talked about that in last month's interview with Elena Kapolnik.
So they intended for you to blow up that ET base in Dulce.
I think they intended me to shut up. And I took out the being that was doing it to me.
Okay, so
It was
the ETs at Dulce were the ones doing it to you, and did you
in April. And I haven't been shot
in April.
I haven't been shot since then.
Okay.
I've been shot with energy weapons 8 times in the last 13 months. That's why I went public in the first place.
Who shot you the first time? Was that a human or an ET?
I believe it was an ET. The man I live with and I were visiting his daughter in Nevada, and we had gone to Virginia City, and we were just being tourists. And we went into the local watering hole and got bottles of water. And he had gone into the men's room, and on his way out, this creature behind the bar with shielding up, so I never saw who or what it was, shot both of us.
Wow.
That was in July last year. That was the first time we were shot. Yeah, it was bad. It felt like I was having a heart attack. And I've had heart attacks, so I know what they feel like. And it was horrid, and it burnt. It felt like being hit with a log in first, right into the middle of my back, and it hit him right in the square in the middle of the chest. And we were both in pretty bad shape for several weeks, but there were no visible marks. It was obviously intended to be a kill shot. I don't know why we didn't die.
Wow, interesting.
I've talked to other people in the Secret Space Program group where I'm an admin, and other people who have been hit by such things generally end up dead. So those of us with knowledge of directed energy weapons are all of us like, why aren't you dead? Because that first shot should have done it.
Maybe there's someone protecting you somehow.
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to talk about that. I try to keep the spiritual side of my life out of these interviews. What I have to talk about is so weird already that I don't want to go there.
Well, this is a familiar story. We had a gentleman that was living with us for a while, and he had an energy weapon. Similar story, but something was protecting him. So anyway, I won't go into that. I want to focus on your story, but that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah, it's
he
not
found out that there was something him.
Being shot at is not that uncommon for whistleblowers for the SSP. I mean, being killed is not that uncommon for whistleblowers for the SSP or any of the associated programs. And I say that because there's probably over 100 of them. In our group, we have found that there's a common theme. You're abducted as a child, you're mind fractured into programmable alters, and then you're assigned tasks based on what your DNA abilities are. Okay, I must have had lots of DNA abilities because I know of at least 6 active alters. 2 of them are retired now, and I used air quotes on that. I've gotten awareness of 4 of those alters, and I've been told about 2 others. I don't have awareness with them, so I'm not going to share their stories, but Peter from ACIO was so scared of one of them he told me about that he broke contact with me entirely. He was afraid I would end up in that altar killing him. So,
Okay.
I
saw on somewhere that you have, you have an assassin altar.
That was the one he was talking about, yes.
Yep.
She is a CIA asset, and he said that she mostly takes out drug kingpins. That's how they talked her into doing it, was that these people were selling drugs to children.
So they touch into your moral fiber and activate you that way. Do this because that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, because these people deserve to die. That's how they put it to me. This person is doing this and this and this to kids, so they deserve to die. That's what the agents that have approached me have told me. In this altar, not realizing I wasn't her. So yeah, I've had some verification that she's real. And but I don't have any.
Does she have a name? Does she have a name, and are you aware of it?
I'm not aware of her consciously. I don't know what name she uses. It would probably seriously endanger me if I did know, because she uses my physical body.
Right.
She's the only one that I know about that's still active that uses my physical body. Excuse me. The rest that are still active use consciousness transfer into clones. Just a minute.
Take your
time. They have, the CIA and the Secret Space Program and all of the Black Ops that I have been involved with use a lot of ET tech. The personal time portal that allows you to be kidnapped and returned to the same time is Draco tech.
Yeah.
The regeneration tanks are Mantid tech. The directed energy weapons are tall white tech. The anti-grav propulsion comes from Aldebaran. The newer oh, I don't know what they're calling it, but it's the copper microwave engines. Those are tall white tech. The plasma jets, that's Draco Tech. And we're constantly acquiring new ET tech because the interplanetary corporate conglomerate has nearly 1,000 ET races that they trade human cyborgs to. But
So
that's
it's kind of like the human cyborgs.
Slaves.
They're slaves. We have about 2 minutes to do the hour and the break. Okay.
okay. Once I got to where that I was trained, weaponized, and they knew what I could do reliably, then they put in the firewall for their own protection. And that was when they sent me to Mars in 1964. So we can start with that with the next segment.
That sounds
Wonderful.
great. Okay, so we're going to start with Mars in 1964. So we have like a minute. What age were you? Because they do regress you. So
Yeah, and did you ever get your back pay for all those extra years they made you work?
we have like a minute, honey. In 1964, what age were you?
9.
9. Okay, so you're still
I'm
Wow.
still
a chronological.
I'm still a little kid.
So you're still a little kid. Okay, great. And let's see, we still have. Oh, okay. He said maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, we're stalling, folks, because we do want to start the second hour with Mars in 64, and we're just waiting for the break music to come on, and we do have a minute or 2 more. So let's just recap a little bit. So this all happened when you were a very young child, and they kept returning you. So by the time you were
No,
done and pushed back.
I was kidnapped in 1959, and I was kept for the duration.
Right.
This was not separate kidnappings. This was all done in one swoop. From my mother's perspective, it was all done in one night.
Right. So you came back in 59 as a, what were you, a 5-year-old?
I came back to the exact same night within 15 minutes of when they had taken me.
So you got to live with your parents until you were 9 and taken
No.
again. No? Yes?
No. I was stolen at age 4 and kept until 2014, I'm sorry. And then I was age regressed and mind sealed and sent back to 1959. So I spent 55 years in a single kidnapping. And that was
And then when you were back in 59. Go ahead.
That was the norm for that time range. There were so many emotional issues for the kids that came back that by the 80s they started doing 20 years.
That's a good place to stop. We'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes. And you're listening to segments.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you.
Why am I here?
You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here.
You haven't answered my question.
The Matrix is older than you know. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation.
Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lassan.
Let's imagine. If you glimpsed the future, were frightened by what you saw, what would you do with that information? You would go to who? Politicians? Captains of industry? And how would you convince them? Data? Facts? Good luck. The only facts they won't challenge are the ones that keep the wheels greased and the dollars rolling in. But what if there was a way of skipping the middleman, putting the critical news directly into everyone's head? The probability of widespread annihilation kept going up. The only way to stop it is to show it. To scare people straight. Because what reasonable human being wouldn't be galvanized by the potential destruction of everything they've ever known or loved? To save civilization, I would show its collapse. How do you think this vision was received? How do you think people responded to the prospect of imminent doom? They gobbled it up like a chocolate eclair. They didn't fear their demise, they repackaged it. It can be enjoyed as video games, as TV shows, books, movies. The entire world wholeheartedly embraced the apocalypse and sprinted towards it with gleeful abandon. Meanwhile, Earth was crumbling all around you. You've got simultaneous epidemics of obesity and starvation. Explain that one. Bees and butterflies start to disappear. The glaciers melt. Algae blooms all around you. The coal mine canaries are dropping dead, and you won't take the hint. In every moment, there is the possibility of a better future, but you people won't believe it. And because you won't believe it, you won't do what is necessary to make it a reality. So you dwell on this terrible future, and you resign yourselves to it. For one reason, because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Because that future doesn't ask anything of you today. Yes, you saw the iceberg, warned the Titanic. But you will just steer for it anyway, full steam ahead. Why? Because you want to sink. You gave up.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, Captain Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library. of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season 2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fetch, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there is Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Divine. Yeah, where are we? On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Janet Care Lessin, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and we're talking to Penny Bradley, and she has us on the seat of the edge of our seat. But before we get back to part two, we're going to talk about Mars in 1964. I want to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslip.com website and make your donation this week. $5, $15, $20, whatever you can donate is greatly appreciated. And a Mad Painter, where are we in the process this month? How are we doing?
We're not doing real good. I think we got like $60, and it isn't real good. We got a special going, though. If you donate $40, you get a 1-ounce silver bar, and you have to put in the donation thing, Silver Rush, to get it, and your address, and it's only in the continental USA.
All right, so we can't get it in Hawaii, but you guys can get it over there in the mainland. Sounds great. Do you want to say anything before we bring Penny? Okay, so Penny Bradley, welcome back to the show. And we're talking about your age, 9 years old, and you're off to Mars, and it's 1964.
Yeah. I wanted to finish up one point before we head off.
Go ahead.
When I've given my testimony before, the one thing that people have the most trouble wrapping their minds around is that with the portal tech that's used to kidnap us in the first place, to the people left behind, there's no more than 15 minutes elapsed. But for the person kidnapped, you go through an entire lifetime before you come home. There is only one kidnapping at a time in my generation. Now later on, they would break it up, like Corey Good talks about. They took him this and they took him that and they took him the other. That was because the single long kidnapping was so hard on us that they decided to start breaking it up so maybe we wouldn't be crazy when we came back. They thought it was more efficient. They didn't treat us like kids. They treated us like properties. A lot. To be honest, there's no more than 10% of us that made it into space in the first place. And those that did go, maybe 5% of us weren't crazy when we came back. So
you must be a very strong soul.
Either that or I'm crazier than I think I am.
Or you have an ally.
I may have allies. Actually, I'm pretty sure I have allies, but I don't want to go into that. So if people have any questions, they should probably, what do? Call them in or type them in?
What we want to do is get your story this first one. We'll have you back for another one maybe in a month or so, and we can do some Q&A. But if you do, listeners, if you have questions, if you could just put them in the chat, and Ahmad will field them and send them to us.
There's a few things that one, Andy Bashago, when he went to Mars, he found this one area where there were lots and lots and lots of Caucasian bodies wearing a light blue clothes, and he said that looked like a mass execution or something like that. And then we get the report from Randy Kramer that the slave colonies, the corporate slave colonies, had broken away and broken contact with their. What is it, Janet?
I want to get Penny's story and not cloud it with other people's renditions. So we'll get to that point. Let's have Penny talk about her experience first, and then we can compare stories. Okay?
I'll give a short answer for that. The only Caucasian people that I knew on Mars were affiliated with the colonists. There are. So if that was Caucasian people in light blue suits, they were somehow affiliated with the Germans. When I was there were, I went to Mars through the same New York jumpgate that Andrew Basiago used. You go in, it looks like a large elevator. It goes up and down like a normal elevator until they decide that you're going to Mars. And then you're told, step away from the walls. And you kind of huddle in the middle. I was there with the group of survivors from Langley. And there were probably 8 of us. And we all spoke minimal English, just enough to follow instructions. And you get into the elevator and you huddle in the middle because you can't touch the walls. And when they turn it on, there's like this bounce and then hum that gets louder. And the walls morph from verticals to like an oval bubble. And you just go. And it takes 20, 30 minutes to get to Mars. And you step out and you're in Aries Prime. And the 8 of us were assigned to go to Shula, where we were taken from basically prison cells and psi weaponization to a Teutonic culture where you were rewarded for being a bully. And we were there without protective parents. And we were instantly immersed into German language. And we had not been going to school while we were at Langley. We wore cotton pajamas and had our heads shaved and constantly subjected to weird experiments and severe punishments if we failed. And now we were going to school with colonist kids. I understand that Andy was in a special program of American kids and they spoke English. So while I would have been there at the same time that he was, the odds of us interacting are really remote, and I don't remember him from there, and he probably doesn't remember me. But we did use the same jump gate. Now, I was in Schule, German for school, for 10 years. And I didn't learn really good German.
But you came back to your in 15 minutes with some German. Is that right?
Yeah, some.
Wow.
I got in trouble for speaking it. My father thought I was making fun of him. But when I was on Mars, I was considered to be U.S. Navy on loan to the Martian colonies first. And they considered me a freak because of the genetic modifications and because of the weaponized psi abilities. And because I was already 9 years old, I was way behind in school. They started us off with first graders or the equivalent. And so we had to learn how to read and write in German. We had to learn basic math. They don't use base 10 there. They use base 60. Mm-hmm. And they don't teach relativity. They teach electric universe and quantum mechanics. Instead of Earth geography, you're taught how to get along with the ETs. You're taught basic ecology of Mars, and yes, it has one. You can breathe the air. You can drink the water. Mars has lots of water underground. It's like living at 8,000 feet in northern Arizona. That's what it's like. It gets to 60, 70 degrees in the daytime. It gets well below freezing at night, so you can't be, I don't know, you mentioned Hawaii. It's not like Hawaii where you can go and be naked on the beach. Right. Not even in the daytime. But if you have shelter at night and reasonable protective clothing, you can do pretty well in the daytime, and as long as you have protection at night. The air's thin, so you have to wear weights whenever you go walking because the planet's smaller, so you weigh less, and it does make a difference in how you walk. If you're not used to it, it's really hard. You end up jumping instead of walking. And
do you know where you were on the planet? We were talking somewhere at the equator, somewhere at the pole region. Do you know what part of Mars where you were located?
I know we were supposed to be in the area that belonged to the Draco, but that the Germans didn't like that area because it was too dry. And so they wanted an area farther north that was in the volcanic tubes. But it was already taken by the Mantids and the Mars Raptors. And so they bombed the cities. I think it was neutron bombs, but it might have been just poison instead, because whatever it was, we had to stay out for a couple of months while it dissipated. And then we could just walk in and dispose of the bodies. And the city was ours. And that had happened before I got there. And so the Germans just did it. Didn't care about the treaties, didn't care about that those were sentient beings. They just did it. And that started the Mars Wars. The wars that Randy Kramer fought in, the war that I fought in. It was their sheer selfishness that started it.
So the Mars Wars was what, the German humans against what species, or who was it? Who was it? Factions?
The Germans are there with associated Terrans. That's what we call them. And there are Terrans from every country that has nuclear weapons except France. I don't know why not France, but every country that has nuclear weapons has people on Mars. Okay, there were 5 colony cities when I left Mars in 1990. And they all speak German. Some of them also speak English. There are lots of ICC factories around the planet.
What's an ICC factory?
ICC is Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. The corporations in space.
Okay.
And most of their factories are involved in processing kidnapped humans into cyborgs. That's the primary That's the primary product that they sell to ETs, is humans turned into cyborgs.
What functions do they cyborg?
Honey, come up here if you can ask questions. Okay, so to explain what the cyborg is, what are they doing?
What is this?
Because we think the Borg. Right, go ahead.
Okay, what a cyborg is a combination of an android and human consciousness, and enough human parts to keep the consciousness seated. It generally doesn't have more than simple awareness, because that's all it takes to run the tech. Most of the ET tech requires a consciousness to operate it. That's the only reason that they have any human in it at all. But it takes enough of the brain to operate the tech. So the rest of the pieces of the human are packaged up as food and sold to ETs, or as DNA samples and sold to ETs interested in the metagene. We have about 2 million Earth humans a year go completely missing. There's no trace of them ever to be found again on Earth. Some of them are food for ETs. Most of them are converted into cyborgs and sold. Now, these cyborgs can be anything from a personal assistant, what you would consider a house slave, but most of them are sold to various races to use as grunt soldiers in their never-ending wars. The galaxy, well, this part of the galaxy has 8 ongoing wars that have lasted for more than 1 million years. And they're constantly looking for soldiers for that. So that's what most of them go for.
Let me ask a question. When they create a cyborg human, what happens to the soul? Is the soul then trapped in that form for the duration of that? Okay.
Yes. The soul is trapped in that form until the machine no longer exists.
And about how long do they last if they don't get destroyed?
My understanding is they're guaranteed for 600 years.
Okay.
And you can't you can't reincarnate for that long, for however long the machine is still going. And
how do they decide they're taking? Do they have criteria like?
The criteria are you are alive still, although that's with the regeneration tank, that's kind of moot. They can bring you back up to 2 months. The one thing
so they can take people, and they take people out of graves.
I understand they take people out of hospitals, people who are dying of cancer or other things that are untreatable, and they misrepresent what they're going to do to you. They just say, well, you're not going to hurt anymore and you won't have cancer anymore. And to someone that's dying of a horrible, painful disease, that by itself sounds like heaven. So they don't really understand what they're going into. A lot of homeless, a lot of sick and dying people, a lot of refugees. Some of the wars that are going on Earth are deliberate to produce refugees to be turned into cyborgs, so that no one will miss them. They do test some of these people for their psi abilities and their suitability for service before they convert them. But most of them are cyborgs, especially if they have brown skin. These people are really racist.
Do they take women, pretty women, for sex slaves, or is it all military?
Oh, there are sex slaves.
Do they prefer certain races for their sex slaves?
Okay, we need to talk about who all is out there.
Okay.
We have Earth Defense Force, which is run by the U.S. Air Force, and they are the only group that is not mind-controlled. Those people are out there defending the Earth because they're patriots, and they have agreed to do this knowing they can never come back because of the secret agreements.
Never.
In my opinion, those people are real heroes. And I'm hoping that creating the space agency through the Air Force will allow those people to be recognized as the heroes they are.
Wonderful.
Above them is Solar Warden. It's run by the U.S. Navy. It's basically the Coast Guard of the solar system. They do a lot of science research. They transport a lot of these kidnapped people. Some of them they know they're transporting, and some of them they don't. But they're up to their ears in the atrocities. Each base or colony, and there are colonies and bases on every planet and moon large enough in the solar system except Venus. Venus is already inhabited by a hostile race. Jupiter has various reptilians living there, and Saturn is inhabited by a hostile race. The rest of them all have Terran colonies or bases. Most of the cyborg conversions are done on Mars, in the asteroid belt, Ceres, and Pluto. Pluto has a huge factory. There are other races who come into various places throughout the solar system to do trade. There is a interstellar sort of United Nations thing where these guys all meet together that orbits around Jupiter. That's an interesting place.
Have you been there?
My ship had been there. I was not allowed off the ship. So.
Okay.
I got in trouble on Mars. So I was, even though I was a lieutenant, I was a slave later on. But.
What did you do?
What did I do?
What did you do?
What did I do? Okay, because I was a MELABS, genetically modified, I was considered a freak and not allowed a lot of the normal German culture activities. And I took a lover anyway.
Oh, bad girl.
Bad girl. And I ended up pregnant a couple of times, and they dumped me into the regen tank to erase the babies. And this particular episode that I got in deep shit for, I was a fighter pilot, and I was sent to investigate a nest of raptors, and they were having dinner, which in this case was captured German colonists. And one of them was my lover. I did what any red-blooded American girl would do, and I just freaked out. But I was mind-linked to a ship's computer that was fully stocked with weapons. And the computer took the panic and ran with it and completely blew the place up. Fired all weapons at once. Mars Defense Force decided I was too emotionally unstable to be safe on their planet. So they transferred me to Nachtwaffen. That's the real name for Dark Fleet, by the way.
What's it? Say that again. What's it called?
Nachtwaffen. Night weapon. Night. In the Secret Space program, space is referred to as the night in German. So Nachtwaffen is space weapon.
Okay.
It's a more poetic term. And it's actually what Dark Fleet is called. There is a version that's like the SS, you know, like just like in Nazi Germany. The SS is Schwarzen Sonne, and those people have ingested black goo and have lost their humanity. And they have absolutely no compassion or emotion and they decided I was too emotionally unstable. So I was transferred to Nachtwaffen, to a freighter, where I was one of 3 navigators that were mind-linked into the computer at all times and not allowed off the ship. So I was a prisoner on my ship, but on my ship I was a lieutenant because that was the rank you had to have to be a navigator. And I was occasionally used to target planets with my psi abilities. Nachtwaffen works as an auxiliary to the Draco Empire. We assist them with police operations on rebellious worlds. And we take prisoners of war who are turned over to the ICC to be converted into cyborgs as well.
Wow.
The entire secret space program past Earth orbit is based on slavery, kidnapping, and the sale of human beings to ETs. And it's completely intertwined with the pedophilia and human trafficking on Earth.
Right.
It's all the same people running both. And that's
is there any way, is there anything good? Any way out of this? Any solutions? Or
what about Kramer's boys that are supposed to? They said they're trying to restore balance, trying to organize what's left of the settlers, and there's huge amounts of people that died also. But it's there something good going? Is what Janet wants to know.
There was not in 2014 when I was sent home.
Okay. Well, you got sent home. That's one good thing.
Yeah, I got sent back, and for, how long? I would have recurring nightmares of some of the more traumatic events the whole time. And I had anomalies, like when I was 7 and I was on Earth and my dad paid for swimming lessons and I kept breathing in the pool. You know, things like that.
Oh, you were breathing the water in the pool.
Yeah, well, that's what they told me at Langley, was to breathe water. Yeah, there were things like that, anomalies.
Didn't that freak out? That must have freaked out your parents.
Somewhere around the time I was 7, so I had been home for about 3 years. My father decided that I was a witch.
Oh no!
And he beat me a lot anyway, and he had left preaching because he couldn't support the 5 kids doing that, and had gone back to dairy. And he took up locking me inside a closet with black widow spiders as punishment. And I formed an altar to deal with it. That was another anomaly. And
so he wanted you to die.
He thought if he tortured me enough, it would make the demons go away.
Oh, yeah.
I have serious issues with exorcisms triggering me because of him, and because the last church I was in about 2000, they put me through something called healing of memories, which involved about 100 exorcisms.
Oh my goodness.
They were trying to get rid of my altars. And when it failed, they excommunicated me.
Whoa.
So that was the Episcopal Church.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm very definitely triggered by people who say that SSP survivors are just demon possessed. They don't understand the reality at all. Since I've come forward, I've been diagnosed by shrinks on YouTube, people who've never met me real world, who swear I'm schizophrenic and should be on meds. I've been subjected to Fritz Springmeier's techniques in a group, and I left when they decided I was a demon. That's part of why we have banned the word demon from the Facebook Secret Space Program group, is because I'm not the only one who's been through this. You reach out for help and you just get more torture. So
I'm sorry that happened to you.
And
are your parents still alive?
My father died in 1980 following quadruple bypass surgery. My mother is still alive, and she has altars, but she is in complete, total denial. And I've been writing a book, and she's threatened to sue me over it without even reading it. She's 79. She has not seen any of my videos, thankfully. She's a wannabe Southern matriarch, and I'm the black sheep daughter that won't go along with the program. So.
Oh, that's good, though.
We talk about once every 3 months, although we had a bunch of fires up here last week, and she heard about it on the TV news and got scared, so she was calling me every day for a little bit. It was nice to know she cared, even if she thinks I'm insane. But
so you came back in.
She has to deny you because she's an experiencer herself, and she's denying it in herself. It's so obvious.
It is. It's very obvious. I tried to share with her at one point, and she just put her hands over both her ears and just screamed, "I don't want to know." Right. So I have respected her free will.
Yeah, so when a person says, "I don't want to know," that means they know. You can't even make that statement unless you know.
Yeah, I know that. She knows there's something wrong, but she doesn't want to face it. So
yeah.
She admits to having memory issues. Well, she doesn't really. What she has is alters. And there are huge chunks of her life that I know more about her life than she does. And that's sad.
Yeah.
And some of it she has taken up asking me about, especially her relationship with her parents. And I mean, they were grapes of wrath people. They worked all the time.
Right.
They didn't have time to be good parents. They left her watching her brothers when she was 9. So, you know, she's damaged. And she had alters on top of it. So I'm able to forgive her, but it's still stressful being around her.
So you have a partner?
Yes, Lou.
Tell us.
Lou and I have lived together. Lou and I have lived together for 17 years. I went through 3 bad marriages. 2 of the husbands tried to kill me, and the 3rd one abandoned me after 2 weeks. So I'm not getting married again. But Lou's been good to me for 17 years. He took me in after I was poisoned by one of them. And at that point, I wasn't even able to shower by myself, and I would have died if it hadn't been for Lou.
Oh.
And I'm really, really sorry that he's been being shot with me.
Yeah. Wow. So is there anything else you want to tell us about your tours of duty? And so you were out there. Yeah, we got
in Mars.
10 minutes.
Okay, on Mars, there's a functioning survivor ecology. Before the galactic war that ripped the atmosphere off, there was a Earth-like planet with seas and all kinds of lush plant and animal life. Since that war, most of the planet is desert. There are massive sandstorms that will circle the planet for months. They create enough static electricity that the lightning will hit Phobos. Anything that's above ground and experiences one of these storms, the static charge will wipe out all their electronics, so they lose communications. The above ground bases that we have now have EMF shielding to prevent that. But that's why the original bases and colonies were all underground. That's
Right.
why they wanted the volcanic tunnels so bad. They were underground. They didn't have to build their own tunnels. There were water springs already underneath, so they had everything that they needed to thrive. The Martian colonies have farms with grow lights. They developed the technology that they're now using for indoor farming in a lot of the areas that are becoming unable to be farmed. Everything is recycled. Everything is recycled, even your human waste. The water that's available is all fossil water, so they're very protective of it.
What do you mean fossil water? I don't know what that means.
It means that it's left over from before, and once it's used up, it'll be gone.
Oh.
There are huge lakes underground, but they're not being replenished. There's snow at the poles. There are seasons where the snow at the poles thaws and you have lakes and rivers for a short time. That's where you get the green stuff that shows up on Mars from a distance, from the growth. The water grows mosses and algae, and the shores grow grasses and shrubs, and they're all real sturdy. And at the poles you have trees, sometimes big forests, and they're juniper type trees, but they're sturdier than earth junipers. So the animals that are native there are larger than on Earth. There's lots of cold-blooded animals because they don't require as much food or water to survive. So there's lots of reptilians, there's lots of insects. There are mammals, mostly burrowing ones. There are rats now that there are Terrans. The rats go everywhere we do. There are huge spiders. The biggest ones I've seen are 15 feet across, and I've been dinner.
Oh my God.
I've been dinner.
Oh my God.
There are 5 sentient races on Mars, or at least there were when I was there. There's Terrans, or the German colonists. There are Draco, and most of what are there are warrior and worker class. There's an occasional alpha. There are Mantids, and they are survivors from the Mantids that were there during the Galactic Wars. They're not part of the Mantid Empire. They're a separate group. There are Mars raptors, who are distantly related to the underground raptors here on Earth. But they are in their dark ages. They used to have space flight, and they don't anymore. They're basically in a Stone Age situation. If they had tech, Terrans would not stand a chance on that planet. In an unarmed fight, they will win every time. They're a foot taller, 100 pounds, sometimes 200 pounds heavier, and they come equipped with 3 claws that are 6 inches long on each hand and sharp as razor blades. They can gut you in a single swipe.
Right.
And then there are the native Mars humans. And they are survivors from the Galactic War times.
Yeah.
They're
What do they look like?
They're 7 feet tall or so. They look like Apache, and they have an orange cast to their skin. The women run around with bare breasts. They dress Hindu style with saris. The men also dress Hindu style. I don't know where they get their fabric, but they usually wear blue or black. And these saris are in the lighter gravity are just like, whoa, this is dramatic clothing. Looks really cool. And they have steps inside their towns. If you get too close to them, they'll just up and move, and you won't know where they went. Most of their dwelling places, their villages, will have some sort of a skull statue at the door, so that they can find where home is. They're the favorite food of the Mars raptors, but they're like completely peaceful, non-combatant. They don't even try to defend themselves when the raptors or the spiders get them. We couldn't fathom them at all. There was a program once the war was over in the Northern Hemisphere. There was a program to genetically modify Terrans to look like the native humans, to infiltrate and get intel about them. I know a couple of people that were involved in that, but they haven't gone public.
Wow.
I try not to expose people that haven't gone public.
Right, just not polite.
It's not cool. It's not cool.
So,
what
does a moral person do in this immoral situation? You're just caught.
There are serious consequences to going public, and I would not force that on anyone. In some countries where we have veterans, just talking about UFOs can get you arrested and get your children taken away from you. So we're very careful about not exposing who.
I have a quick question. We're going to be over any time, but one last question. Where do the Anunnaki fit in this, or do they?
Are they the tall whites?
Are the tall whites, yeah.
The tall whites are allied with the U.S. government. The Anunnaki were responsible for the Galactic War that destroyed Mars. They were a subject race of the Draco Empire. They are not allowed into the solar system at this time without explicit permission from the 5 races that run the Earth Council. My understanding is that Enki has consent from the Earth Council to come to Earth to retrieve mining tools. Now, how he's going to interpret that versus how the Earth Council interprets that, I have no idea. I do know that there were some remaining Anunnaki on Earth, notably the handful that live in the basement of the Vatican. And there's been talk about Marduk being in Tanzania. But
Tanzania. Marduk. Well, we're going to run out of time any second now. Do you have a website or anything that you want us to convey to our listeners about yourself, or how to find you, or you don't want to be found, or however you want to do this? We totally support you.
I don't have a website. I haven't been trying to make money off of it.
Well, we will have you back. We will come. Thanks for being so brave.
Penny.
Amazing, Penny. You are such a person. Thank you.
Remote view. Go check your mind. Let us know what you see.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more than speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through